he has done to this country in the 2 years, it's unconscionable. And we need, as the number one priority of this party, is to make sure that we take back the White House. And I'm looking forward to hearing how Nikki Haley is going to do just that. So please give Nikki a big round of applause and welcome back to Iowa.
Hello, Urbandale. You guys can have a seat because I think our friends in the media said they couldn't see. So first of all, it is great to be here. Thank you to everybody that showed up. We have had a great time. We had a great announcement in South Carolina. We went and had full rooms in New Hampshire. And what I can tell you is that Americans are ready for new leadership. So I want to start by telling you can clap to that because we can't say that enough. I want to start telling you a little bit about myself, and then we'll go into what we're trying to do. So I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina, 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. We were the only Indian family in that small town. We weren't white enough to be white. We weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. But my parents knew. My parents knew why we were there. Because my parents knew that we lived in the best country in the world. And they told my brothers, my sister, and me every day that even on our worst day, we were blessed to live in America. When I would get teased on the playground, I would come home and my mom would say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. And it's amazing how that town grew to accept us and came to love us. And my mom started a business out of the living room of our home. I started doing the books for my parents' business at the age of 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that wasn't normal. Now I tell them that was child labor. But you know, the reason that I have such an appreciation for Royal Flooring and any of our businesses is because when I had to figure out what to pay, when times were tough, we stretched that dollar. We got creative and we figured out how to make it work. And when times were good, we never celebrated because we knew the bad times would happen again. Went on to Clemson, graduated with a degree in accounting. Met my husband, go Tigers, met my husband my first weekend at Clemson. We dated for 7 years, been married for 26. We have 2 children. I went on and worked in the corporate arena, and then I came back home to the family business. And I remember one day I was telling my mom how hard it was to make $1 and how easy it was for government to take it. She said, don't complain about it, do something about it. I did not know you weren't supposed to run against a 30-year incumbent in a primary. But ignorance is bliss. Once I realized he was related to half the district, my husband got in the driver's seat, I got in the passenger seat, we put our 2 little ones in the back seat, and we started knocking on doors. And what I told the district was, this is no disrespect to the incumbent, but I think we have way too many lawyers in the State House, and they needed a really good accountant. So even though I was underestimated, we were able to defeat the longest-serving legislator in South Carolina, and then we got to work. And after being in the State House a few years, there was something that happened that changed everything. In South Carolina, when you would pass legislation, it would pass on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. But one day, with our Republican House, our Republican Senate, and our Republican governor, they passed a piece of legislation that would give legislators a pay raise. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, silence. The ayes have it. Yet to this day, you can't find one legislator that says they voted themselves a pay raise. I got really upset, and I went to the Speaker of the House, and I said, this is why the people don't trust us. And I filed a bill that said anything important enough to be debated on the floor of the House or the Senate was important enough for the people to know how their legislator voted. The Speaker said, put the bill away. We don't need to have it. We will decide what the people need to see and what they don't. I remember going home to my husband saying, if I can't even get legislative votes on the record, what am I doing? And he said, then fight. So I went around the state and I said, did you know of all the bills passed in the House, only 8% were on the record? Did you know of all the bills passed in the Senate, only 1% was on the record? So if you didn't know how your House member voted 92% of the time, if you didn't know how your senator voted 99% of the time, how did you know who to vote for when you went to the polls? The people of South Carolina were shocked. To put this into perspective, my first year in office, I was chairman of the freshman class. My second year, I was majority whip. My third year, I was on a powerful business committee. And my fourth year, I was subcommittee chair of banking. The year that I wouldn't put the bill away, they stripped me of everything. I could take the well, and no one would listen. I could sponsor a bill, and no one would co-sponsor. So I ran for governor. And I'm proud to say one of the first bills we signed into law is now in South Carolina. Anything debated on the floor of the House or the Senate requires a legislative vote on the record, and we took it a step further. We did it on every section of the budget. And when it was time for me to sign that legislation, Kim, you'll appreciate this, we signed it in the State House, blaring music, and it was Pat Benatar's "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." So from there, I became governor, and we took a state that was hurting. It was in double-digit unemployment. We had all of our textile jobs had gone overseas, and South Carolina was not, they didn't love themselves, they didn't fight for themselves, they didn't believe in themselves. And so we changed the culture. We started selling. And before I left being governor, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz, Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies, and they were calling us the Beast of the Southeast, which I still love. President Trump called and asked me if I would be his ambassador at the United Nations, and that was the time where I said, I don't even know what the United Nations does. I just know everybody hates it. But I went on to do it. I made a point to go in, and I didn't study the do's and don'ts of the UN. I wanted to go in with fresh eyes. I wanted to break it. I wanted to make sure that we were going and taking the kick me sign off of the United States' back. And I said, we are going to make sure for everybody that has our backs, we're going to have your back. But for anybody that doesn't have our backs, we were taking names, and that we did. I will tell you that I made a point to, when I went to the United Nations, I told everybody what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. That was what was important, and we did that. We passed the largest sanctions on any country in a generation with North Korea. We got out of the Iran deal. And then when we moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, we were vilified on the eyes of the world stage. And I was proud to issue the first veto by the United States to condemn that. And then they put us in front of all 193 countries, and they said that the U.S. didn't have the right to do it. And I said, the U.S. has the right to put our embassy wherever we want. We always put it in the capital of every country. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that's what we did, and we were going to do that. I was proud to say that 68 countries didn't vote against us, which, believe it or not, at the UN is a win. But I was mad. I was mad when I left there, and I went to my office, and I told my staff, I said, I want you to put a book together. And in that book, I want you to list all 193 countries. The second column, I want you to put the percentage of times these countries voted with the U.S. and opposed to the U.S. And then I want the third column to be how much foreign aid we give them. I took that book and I gave it to President Trump. He lost his mind. He totally lost his mind, flipping pages, yelling out countries. And my point to him was, I'm not saying you give foreign aid based on a percentage vote at the UN, But that should be one of the things we consider. The United States has to stop trying to buy friends. You can't buy a country that says death to America. It's not going to happen. Quit giving them money. We were giving Pakistan $1 billion in military aid, and they were harboring terrorists trying to kill our soldiers. We stopped giving that $1 billion to Pakistan. And what I saw at the UN was they would love to bash us every chance they got, but then they'd turn around and have their hand out. So we've got to start being smart in the way that we handle that. So now we're sitting in a situation where Joe Biden is president. How many of you love that? And we're in a world of hurt. So when you look at the situation, you look at our economy, you see inflation is high. We are $31 trillion in debt. Our kids will not forgive us for this. We see earmarks are now the norm, and Republicans and Democrats both did that. We are paying 15% of our federal budget's interest. You've got 1 in 6 Americans can't pay their utility bill. 50% of Americans say they're not making as much as they were a year ago. 60% of Americans are in credit card debt. And in October, 60% of small business owners, which are the heartbeat of our economy, could not make their rent payment. That's what's happening in the economy in America. Then you go and you look at education. Our children have fallen so far back that we don't know if we can catch them up. Pre-COVID, 70% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading. Think about that. Pre-COVID, 66% of 8th graders were not proficient in math. So you've got an issue where kids can't read or do math, and that's before COVID. Then you go and you add all these lockdowns, and you go and you set them back even further. We've got some work to do. And instead, what's happening? You've got all this woke ideology that left the universities and now is in the elementary schools. You've got critical race theory, where if you've got a 5-year-old girl going into kindergarten, if she's white, you're telling her she's bad. And if she's brown or black, you're telling her she'll never be good enough and she'll always be a victim. That's abusive. And then you had the whole country up in arms because of a Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, right? Which basically just said, you don't need to talk about gender before 3rd grade. Well, I don't even think that goes far enough. When I was growing up, you didn't have sex ed until 7th grade. And even then, your dad had to sign a permission slip, and my dad wouldn't sign it. So I was the uncool kid in the classroom next door. We don't need to be telling our kids about gender. That's for the parents to do. That has nothing to do with schools. And then you look at the security situation. You know, if you say defund the police, it's not that you hurt the morale of law enforcement. You do that. But you give criminals a green flag to do whatever it is they want to do. And now look at the crime on our streets. It's bad. And you look at our border. Now, my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by what's happening on the border. We've had enough people cross that border that's larger than Chicago and Philadelphia combined. We've had over 100 terrorists that we know of. We've had enough fentanyl cross that border that would kill every single American. Every state in America is now a border state, and no one's doing anything about it. And then you look at our foreign policy situation. Never in my life did I think that we would look at the sky, that Americans would look up at the sky, and our children would look up at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at them. It is a national embarrassment that that happened. But do you know why that happened? It all started, if we would not have had that debacle in Afghanistan, none of this would have happened. I'm the wife of a combat veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan. While I was governor, by the way, he left me as a single mom governor, and yes, we're still married. The idea that we would leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. And then you go and you have, it started with Obama, Russia going to Ukraine, no one does anything about it. They do it again, Biden's slow to the take, does nothing about it, and he's now creeping in to do it. You've got him falling all over himself to get back into the Iran deal. And then you've got China sitting there basically doing whatever they want, and then they have the nerve to scold us for shooting down the balloon. This is the weakest we have ever looked. And it's the most dangerous it has ever been. So when you look at that, and you look at that situation, what I will tell you is, I don't need to tell you how bad it is, because you feel it. And what I will tell you is, this is now the time we stop complaining. Stop complaining. It's bad, we know it. Now let's start to fix it. So how do we fix it? Let's talk about the solutions, because I think we're better if we talk about solutions than problems, right? So the first thing we do is we realize that Washington, D.C. has a spending problem, and they need to be put on a diet. There is no more spending. If I, as governor of South Carolina, can balance a budget, if you can balance your home budgets, we have got to get D.C. to balance a budget. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. These earmarks have to stop. I don't care what they're for. You can't have $12 million for a baseball stadium in New York, $15 million for New Jersey to get the World Cup, $6.5 million for golf courses in Colorado. There was another couple of million for a hip hop museum in New York. All of this has to stop. We don't have enough to buy groceries. You can't turn around and have our money, our taxpayer dollars, going to things like this. And if our entire budget, 15% of it is interest, quit borrowing money. When you look at the inflation situation and you see how much inflation has gone up, that's when you go back and you say, let's stop buying things and let's start manufacturing in America, just like we did in South Carolina. And if you really want to help American families and you really want to reduce inflation, open up the energy sector. We need to be exporting as much liquefied natural gas as we can. All of those things will make a difference. Then when it comes to education, we have to go back. In South Carolina, I made a point to tell the people of South Carolina, if a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we passed a bill that said any child that couldn't read by 3rd grade, we were holding them back. We were doing reading remediation. We included their parents. We did summer school, and we got them back on track. That should be applied around this country until we can make sure all of our kids can read. I have said for a long time, and I mean it, you have the best governor in the country, hands down. She has proven it time and time again, whether it has been with taxes, whether it has been with reform, and yes, she just did it. In the thing that matters the most when it comes to education, we would not have problems in education if we put education back where it needs to be, in the hands of the parents. We have to have school choice all over this country. And we need to make sure we never close schools ever again, no matter what. Let's get vocational programs back in high school, and let's teach our kids they don't have to go to college. They're great jobs in America that they can make things. And when it comes to our universities, if they want to keep taking Chinese money, then they don't get American money. When it comes to security on our streets, you know, a lot of it is street crime. And you know what happens with street crime? If you have the backs of your law enforcement officers and you let them do their job, you take care of half the problem. The only other thing is we need to give them a raise and thank them for what they do. We need to listen to our Border Patrol. We need to go back to the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to make sure that we do what I did in South Carolina. We passed E-Verify, Arizona-style E-Verify in South Carolina, which said no business could ever hire anyone that was here illegally. Those jobs are for Americans. If anyone wants a job, they have to be here legally. When we did that in South Carolina, all of them stopped coming to South Carolina because there was no jobs. And we made businesses prove it. They had to go through the E-Verify system, and if they got caught, they got punished. We have to start taking this seriously. We are a country of laws. The second you stop being a country of laws, you give up everything this country was founded on. So we need to secure the border. We need E-Verify. We need to let the world know we'll happily welcome you, but you have to prove that you deserve to be here, and we need to do it on merit. Only then will that happen. And then when it comes to foreign policy, we need to understand that when you start telling countries what the United States expects of them and stop being reactionary, they will all step back in line. We need to strengthen our military in a way that they know we mean business. We need to make sure that we let them know if you fly a Chinese spy balloon, it's never even going to get near us. And no, you don't get to condemn us. We're going to hold you accountable, and you're going to feel the pain of it. When you look at what China is doing today, they have created a surveillance state. And we're watching it happen. Republicans and Democrats thought that if we were nice to China, they would want to be like us. They don't want to be like us. They are communists. We need to start treating them like the communists that they are and hold them to account. So all of these solutions, we need to do them all. But the only way we're really going to get it done, we got to have term limits in Congress. We've got to have term limits in Congress. We need to have competency tests for elected officials over the age of 75. We do. That's not being disrespectful, that's transparency. Elected officials work for the people, not the other way around. And Bernie Sanders lost his mind yesterday. For those that are defensive about it, you are exactly the reason we need it. You don't tell your people no. And then the one threat over everything I've told you that we absolutely have to fix. A national self-loathing has taken over our country. The idea that people are now saying that America is bad or rotten to the core or racist. Let me tell you, from the first minority female governor in the country, America is not a racist country. It's not. America is not perfect, and our goal every day should be to make today better than yesterday. But the principles at the heart of America are perfect. We have to remember that. Our children, I want our children to love America. I want our children to fight for America. I want us to remember what it felt like. Do you remember what you felt like when you were growing up? Do you remember how you felt about America? Do you remember it was all about family and church and country? That's where we need to go, and we can get there. It's not going to be easy, but it can happen. Because I will tell you, I don't want this country for my children. You deserve better. Every one of you deserve better. But the way we will get better is not through faint hearts or watered-down compromises. It's by boldly proclaiming what our national purpose is. We have to end this socialism. We have to end this defeatism, and we have to understand that this country is still the best country on earth, and she deserves our love. So now is the time. Now is the time we can say we're not going to complain about it. Now is the time we're going to say we're going to do something about it. But it's going to take every single one of you to be a part of the solution. Now, when I ran against that 30-year incumbent, they all laughed at me. They said, she can't do it. But the people took a chance on me, and we won. When I ran for governor, I ran against a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a state senator, and a very popular congressman. I had the least amount of money, but I had the biggest spirit. And with the people of South Carolina, we won. When I went to the United Nations, they all said I didn't have the experience to do it. And then I got to work. And with all of us, we proved that America was still the standard. When we speak, the world listens. What we do, the world follows. Who we are, the world wants to be. Now we got to do it one more time. And let me tell you, you know the one thing we need? The one thing I need you to commit to is we need to send a badass Republican woman to the White House. If you join with me, that's when we will right the ship. Look, I am the daughter of immigrant parents who know that this country is better than what we have today. I am the wife of a combat veteran, and I know the sacrifice that those soldiers and the military families go through, and the love we all have at the fact they're willing to defend our freedom. I am the mother of 2 children. And my daughter is getting married, and I see how hard it is for them to figure out how to buy a house. And my son is in college, and I see how he's having to write papers that he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not okay. We're gonna stop this. We're gonna make it right. But more than that, I am a proud American that knows our best days are ahead of us. So if you will join with me, we will win our country back. We will love our country again. We will stand strong for our country, and we will be proud of America. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.